Hey there, Night Owl. Before you drift off into dreamland, let's play a little imagination game. Just close your eyes, unless you're driving, in which case absolutely don't. And picture this. You fall asleep in your soft, modern bed and wake up somewhere very different. No buzzing alarm clock. No phone screen glowing with a dozen missed notifications. Just the sound of church bells tolling across a foggy field and a chill in the air that says, quite plainly, "Welcome to the Middle Ages." That's right, it's 1325, and you've just time-traveled into the body of an ordinary peasant. Spoiler, it's going to be a rough morning, but don't worry, we'll suffer together. Now fluff up your haystack pillow, watch out for the fleas, pull your scratchy wool blanket closer, and let's begin. You wake up, slowly, but something's off. There's no familiar hum of traffic outside your window, no phone screen glowing at you, no memory foam cradling your spine like a cloud made of orthopedic promises. Instead, there's a strange crunch beneath your shoulder. Straw. Actual straw. You blink. Your ceiling isn't smooth drywall or warm wood. It's a patchy mess of dark beams and what looks suspiciously like a family of spiders plotting their day above your head. There's a smell in the air that can only be described as haunted barn. Welcome, traveler. It's 1325, and you've just woken up in the Middle Ages. The mattress, or more accurately, the uneven sack of sad hay you've been sleeping on, is covered in a thin linen sheet. It's been washed once this year, maybe, and smells like it has developed its own social life. You attempt to sit up, but immediately discover two things. One, your back hurts in entirely new places. And two, you are not alone. You're in a single-room wooden hut, and the concept of personal space is but a distant, bourgeois fantasy. Your bedroom is also the living room, kitchen, dining hall, and goat pen. On your right is your cousin, snoring loudly, arm across your chest like a medieval weighted blanket. On your left is your younger sibling, still fast asleep, one bare foot wedged firmly into your side. Beyond them, your parents sleep under the same moth-eaten wool blanket, tangled in a position that defies both comfort and decorum. You try to get up without stepping on the chicken. You fail. The chicken is not impressed. The cold hits you instantly. There's no insulation in this charming 14th century Airbnb. The walls are thin wooden planks, occasionally stuffed with hay or moss, and the roof is a loose arrangement of thatch and wishful thinking. Rain has visited recently, so has mold, and now everything smells like wet wool and medieval regrets. You shiver, pulling your one article of clothing tighter. It's a wool tunic, scratchy and stiff, and it doubles as your daywear, sleepwear, formal wear, and probably your funeral outfit if the bread goes bad again. A sliver of pale daylight filters through a crack in the wall. You hear the distant clang of the church bell. That's your alarm clock. It means morning prayers are starting, the village is stirring, and it's time for everyone to get up and pretend they slept well on a pile of hay riddled with more lice than dreams. There's no mirror, but you don't need one. You can feel your appearance. Your hair is matted, your face is unwashed, your teeth feel like they've been coated in medieval wallpaper paste. You try to rub your eyes and get a piece of straw in one. Great. You're already injured, and the day hasn't even started. The goat, your de facto heating system, snorts from the corner. The coals in the hearth have long since gone cold. If you want warmth, you'll need to relight the fire, and to do that, you'll need dry wood, which of course you don't have. Because it rained. Again, you rise, finally, stepping over siblings, chickens, and an ominous puddle that you hope is just spilled ale. The floor is hard-packed earth, slick in places and cracked in others. The roof drips mournfully into a clay bowl someone placed beneath the worst leak. It's already half full. You open the door, or more accurately, You push aside the heavy plank that's held shut with a loop of rope and hope and step out into the chill. The village greets you with a combination of gray fog, low bleating, and a rooster who apparently trained at full volume. The air is crisp and smells like smoke, damp straw, and communal body odor. Smoke curls from a few hearths nearby, which means some other poor soul got up even earlier than you. Your breath fogs in front of you. You scratch your head, feel something crawl across your scalp, and decide emotionally not to investigate. This is your life now. You don't know what a shower is, but you know what it's like to wake up itchy, hungry, and immediately exhausted. You don't have a phone, but you do have a splinter in your thumb and a vague sense that your day is already off to a horrible start. And yet, somehow, you're here, alive, sort of clean, mostly vertical. You shuffle toward the firewood pile, hoping there's something dry enough to burn, and trying not to think about what breakfast will be. Spoiler: it's pottage. Again, you haven't even faced the bucket toilet yet. But that's a trauma for a little later. For now, you begin your day the same way every medieval peasant does. Cold, itchy, slightly damp, and already questioning your life decisions. Welcome to your morning in the Middle Ages. Morning in the medieval village is a symphony of unpleasant sounds. The rooster, the distant church bell, the bleeding goat you accidentally stepped on, and, most importantly, your stomach. But before you can deal with food, there's a more urgent matter. Nature calls. And in the Middle Ages, she does not leave a voicemail. She kicks the door down. You shuffle toward the back of your hut, rubbing sleep out of your eyes, breath visible in the cold air. There is no bathroom. There is no seat with a lid, no flush, no faint smell of lavender disinfectant. What you have is a wooden bucket, a slightly splintered, questionably cleaned, perpetually offended-looking bucket. It lives behind the house, next to the woodpile, and is used by every member of your household, sometimes twice a night. It has seen things. It knows fear. The bucket is not empty. You take a deep breath, immediately regret it, and proceed with the grim efficiency of someone who has no alternatives. There's no toilet paper either. In this century, wiping options range from straw and leaves to scraps of wool if you're lucky. You are not lucky. A handful of old straw will have to do. You remind yourself once again that shaking hands is not a medieval custom for a reason. Once you've finished, you have to get rid of it, which brings us to the next cheerful tradition: chamber pot disposal. You hoist the bucket, heavy, warm, and ominously sloshing, and march toward the front of the house. Medieval sanitation works on one simple principle: out of sight, out of the street, eventually. You open your front door and, like every other good citizen of the village, you shout, "Gardez l'eau," a corruption of "regardez l'eau," meaning, watch out for the water. Except it's not water, and everyone knows it. The warning is less about being polite and more about giving passers-by a fighting chance to dodge. Then you dump it. The contents splash onto the muddy street with a sound that could haunt plumbers for generations. If you're unlucky, someone is walking by and yells something unprintable in 14th century French. If you're really unlucky, the wind blows the wrong way. Congratulations, it's on your shoes now. The streets aren't paved. They're muddy, uneven, and function as open-air sewers. Waste from every house, plus animal droppings, plus whatever mysterious sludge the butcher dumped last night, all mingle in a fragrant cocktail that runs through the center of the village. In some towns, there are ditches for it. In many places, it just goes wherever gravity decides. Children play here, chickens peck through it, dogs drink from it. You try not to think about that last part. For wealthier folk, there's sometimes a slightly more sophisticated option: the garderobe. It's essentially a hole in the castle wall that drops waste straight into the moat. It sounds clever until you remember that the moat is also a water source for enemies during sieges. Yes, attackers have been known to climb into castles through the toilet chute. If you ever needed a reason to skip knighthood, there it is. There are public latrines in some towns, usually built over running water or deep pits. But they are shared, shoulder to shoulder, with zero privacy and ventilation that can best be described as ambitious but failing. You could sit there making small talk with a stranger as both of you try not to gag. Medieval life doesn't really believe in personal space, even during your most vulnerable moments. The smell is constant. It's not something you notice occasionally. It's the background music of your life. Streets reek in summer when everything ferments under the sun. They freeze solid in winter, turning the roads into icy, pungent slip-and-slide death traps. Even indoors, the scent lingers. No amount of burning herbs in the hearth can fully disguise the perfume of human existence without plumbing. And yet, no one seems particularly shocked by any of this. It's just daily reality. Your neighbors are dumping their buckets too. The butcher's apprentice is whistling as he chucks a suspicious liquid down the lane. A gaggle of children are chasing a chicken through the mud, their feet bare, their laughter cutting through the stench like bells. You return the bucket to its designated corner, where it will wait patiently for its next appointment. Later, someone will rinse it with a splash of water from the well. Rinse being a generous term, that same water is also used for cooking. Yes, that's as alarming as it sounds. You step carefully through the muck, trying to keep your balance on the uneven ground. One misstep, and you'll be face first in humanity's collective leftovers. It's happened before. You've seen people emerge from the street, looking like a cautionary tale. The village dogs follow you, sniffing at your ankles, because of course they do. As you trudge back toward your door, you can't help but marvel at how unglamorous this reality is compared to how the Middle Ages are often painted in books and films. There are no gallant knights riding through the streets here, just you, a bucket, and the eternal struggle against gravity and bad aim. You breathe through your mouth as you step inside. The air is no better, but at least it's warmer. You wipe your hands on the hem of your tunic, because what else can you do, and begin preparing for the next medieval ritual, breakfast. But for now, you take a moment. You look down at your straw-stuffed bed, the smoky hearth, the muddy street outside, and you accept a simple, universal truth. Before toothbrushes, plumbing, or hand sanitizer, everyone's day began with a bucket. You've survived the medieval toilet experience. Barely. Your hands are dry, your dignity is damp, and your feet are already regretting being attached to you. But it's still early in the day, and there's one universal constant that spans centuries and social classes: hunger. Your stomach growls loudly. It's not a polite request. It's a full-throated medieval protest. Time for breakfast. Or what passes for breakfast in a world where meal planning means what didn't spoil overnight? You shuffle back inside your hut. The family is waking up, blinking and yawning in the half-light that seeps through the cracks in the wall. Your mother stirs the hearth with a poker, coaxing life out of a few sullen embers. There's no chimney, just a hole in the roof that reluctantly exhales a thin trail of smoke, sending most of it right back into your eyes. Nothing like mild smoke inhalation to start your morning. Now, the food. First up is the pottage, again. Pottage is the ultimate medieval dish, always available, never exciting. It's a thick stew made from whatever edible odds and ends you have on hand, simmered endlessly in a cauldron that probably hasn't been truly emptied since your christening. Every day, new ingredients are tossed in: yesterday's turnip tops, today's suspicious cabbage bits, maybe a leftover bone, and, if you're lucky, a dried bean that escaped the pantry rats. The result is less a soup and more a domestic experiment in survival. It doesn't taste bad. It just doesn't taste like anything. Its flavor profile could be described as warm, with hints of slightly wet turnip. But it's hot, it's filling, and it doesn't try to escape the bowl. You consider that a win. You ladle a portion into a wooden bowl. Ceramic is too expensive and breaks too easily. Your spoon is carved from wood, slightly cracked, faintly stained and cherished like a family heirloom, which it might actually be. There's a dent in the rim where your brother bit it during a bread-related incident last winter. Speaking of bread, bread is the other half of this hearty, horrifying breakfast. You reach for a loaf that could legally be classified as a weapon. It's dense, dark, and crumbles like dried mud. Made from coarse flour, barley, rye, maybe a bit of millet if someone traded well at market, it's sometimes bulked up with less than edible fillers. Ground acorns, sawdust, chalk. Yes, chalk. It gives it body, they say. It also gives you kidney stones. You don't slice this bread. You gnaw at it. You soften it in your pottage. You consider throwing it at the rooster, but remember, it might bounce back and hit you. Bread is serious business in a medieval household. It's made once a week, or whenever the oven's free, and it's stored like treasure. Mold? Just scrape it off. That's seasoning. And what are you drinking with this feast? Beer. Obviously. It's not the kind of beer you know. This is small beer, a weak, barely alcoholic brew made by boiling water, adding grains, letting it ferment slightly, and hoping it doesn't kill anyone. It's cloudy, sour, and warm, but it's safer than water, which is basically bacteria in disguise. Everyone drinks it. Children, elders, the priest. Your goat probably got into it once. You take a sip. It's mildly fizzy, a little warm, and it tastes like the color beige, but it won't give you dysentery, which in this world counts as 5 stars. If you're lucky, there might be cheese on the table. Not fresh cheese, not even recognizable cheese. This is hard, tangy, sometimes crunchy from aged cheese. You scrape off the blue bits, maybe mold, maybe flavor, and add it to the pottage like a garnish. The smell alone clears your sinuses. You glance around. Your siblings are already eating. Your father is chewing so slowly and methodically you wonder if he's dozing off mid-bite. Your youngest brother is trying to dip his bread in your bowl. You jab him with your spoon. Outside, the village is waking up. You hear hooves, barking dogs, someone arguing in French over chickens. Smoke rises from a dozen hearths. The baker's assistant is already running down the street with a tray of half-burnt loaves. Somewhere, a baby is screaming. Somewhere else, a pig is screaming. You hope they aren't in the same house. You finish your pottage and bread, wiping your bowl with the last bite. No crumbs left behind. Food is too scarce for that. There's no coffee, no eggs, no jam, no fruit, unless it's late summer and you've been very, very lucky. The only flavor in your life comes from onion or garlic if you can afford it, and salt if you're practically royalty. But despite the gloom, the cold, and the curious crunchy bits in the cheese, you're full. Not happy exactly, but fueled. And in medieval times, that's more than most can say. You stack your bowl with the others. No running water means someone will scrub them later with sand, ashes, and a prayer. You hope it's not you. You take a deep breath. It smells faintly of turnips and desperation. But hey, you've eaten. You're alive. And it's time to go to work. After all, there's barley to thresh, mud to move, and absolutely zero workplace safety standards to protect you from anything. You've eaten your pottage. You've sipped your barley beer. You've braved the bucket. The sun is rising higher, and with it comes a bitter truth. It's time to get dressed. You might assume that, since you're already clothed, this is a non-event. But in the Middle Ages, getting dressed isn't about choosing an outfit. It's about recommitting yourself to the same life decisions you made yesterday and the day before, and every day for the last 5 years. Because you own one outfit, singular, just one. There's no closet, no dresser, no heap of unfolded laundry whispering to you from the corner. Just a hook on the wall where you keep your only set of clothes, hung there like a limp woolen accusation. Let's begin with the basics. Your tunic, scratchy, shapeless, and roughly the texture of tree bark, is made of coarse wool or homespun linen. If it's winter, it's damp. If it's summer, it's still damp, just hotter. It's long enough to cover most sins, short enough to trip over if you get cocky. There are no fasteners. Maybe a rope belt if you're lucky, or a piece of leather that's more decorative than useful. You tie it around your waist like a medieval bathrobe and pretend it adds structure. It doesn't. Under that, probably nothing. Underwear exists, in theory. But unless you're a noble or a monk with access to the monastery's weaving room, you're going commando in a wool sack. There are undertunics and brays, baggy medieval underpants tied with string, but those are luxury items. You, friend, are not luxurious. You slip the tunic on and immediately remember how much it itches. It doesn't get softer with age. It gets meaner, like a bad roommate who's learned your weaknesses. Every seam is a little off. Every stitch seems strategically placed to rub your skin raw. The collar is too tight. The armpits are a war zone. But it's your only outfit, so you shrug and adjust and begin the daily chafe anew. Next, your hose. Not those hose. These are leg coverings. Think of them as prehistoric leggings made from boiled wool, stitched together like someone's first attempt at pants. They tie to your tunic with strings, and there's always at least one that's snapped off. Today it's the left one. You tie it with a bit of twine you found in the corner and hope no one notices. Your shoes, if you own any, are more suggestion than footwear. Thin leather slippers, barely stitched and already full of holes. There's no right or left, just mostly foot-shaped. You slip them on and feel the wet earth squish through the sole. You sigh, loudly. The shoes sigh back. And that's it. That's the look. You're not stylish, you're not coordinated, but you're dressed. And that's all the village expects. Clothes don't say much about your personality in the Middle Ages. They say whether you're rich, poor, or pretending not to be diseased. That's it. Now, hygiene. You run your fingers through your hair, parting it with a comb made from bone or wood. It doesn't help. Your hair is thick with grease, dust, and enough lice to qualify as a petting zoo. You scratch your head. Something moves. You stop scratching. There's no soap. Not real soap, anyway. Lye exists, and ashes, and occasionally something called soft soap, which is more of a texture than a cleanser. You splash your face with cold water from a bucket and call it a wash. The water is cloudy. You don't look too closely. Baths? Not part of the daily routine. Maybe once a month. Maybe. When you do bathe, it involves hauling water, heating it over a fire, pouring it into a leaky wooden tub, and hoping you get in first before the water turns into soup. Right now, you're saving yourself for Sunday, or maybe Easter. You glance at your reflection in a bit of polished metal. It's distorted, like a funhouse mirror that tells hard truths. Your face is pale, blotchy, and weather-beaten. Your teeth... Ah, yes. We'll get to those later. The final touch, your cap. If you're a woman, you might wear a linen wimple or veil. Married women are expected to keep their heads covered. Modesty, morality, and a desperate attempt to keep their hair from catching lice again. If you're a man, maybe you've got a coif, a snug cloth cap tied under the chin that makes everyone look like a medieval toddler. It's warm, though, and it hides the bald patch no one talks about. And then there are layers. If it's cold, you layer up with whatever you have. An old cloak, a second tunic that used to belong to your uncle, a rag tied around your neck, gloves made from whatever creature you last ate. You don't care how it looks, you care how it smells, which is bad. Everything smells bad. You have long since stopped noticing. Now dressed, you step outside. The air is brisk. A breeze lifts your tunic and reminds you how few barriers there are between your rear end and the elements. You adjust your belt. You mutter a curse. You pass your neighbor. She nods, dressed identically. Same tunic, same tired face, same scowl of someone who woke up already sore and suspicious of the weather. You're both walking stereotypes, and yet there's comfort in it. No decisions to make, no outfits to plan, no laundry to fold. Just one outfit. Forever. Get dressed. Get itchy. Get on with your life. Welcome to the medieval wardrobe. You're dressed. You're fed. You've braved the bucket and the bread. And now, it's time to face one of the most harrowing aspects of medieval life, your mouth. Let's begin with your teeth, if you still have most of them. You probably don't. By the time a peasant reaches your age, which might be 20-something, and that's generous, dental decline is already well underway. Cavities are common. Gum disease is universal. And breath? Well, we'll get to that. Spoiler, it's aggressive. There is no toothbrush in your hut. There is no toothpaste, no mint, no floss, no three-step brightening routine. If you're really on top of things, you might own a twig. Not just any twig, one from a specific plant or tree that, according to local gossip or a monk's note, has some kind of purifying effect. You chew the end until it frays and scrub your teeth with the resulting bristle nub, hoping it removes at least one layer of grime and sin. More often than not, you do nothing. Dental hygiene isn't really a concept yet. Most people believe that bad teeth are a natural part of life, like back pain or sudden death. The idea that you could prevent tooth loss with daily care. Revolutionary. And several centuries away. You try not to poke around with your tongue, but it's hard to ignore the landscape inside your mouth. One molar feels loose. Another has a jagged edge that slices your cheek every time you chew anything tougher than porridge. There's a constant ache that flares when you drink, breathe, or think too hard about apples. And then there's the color. Modern teeth? White, sometimes unnaturally so. Yours? Yellow at best, brown in patches, black in corners. You've seen nobility with sugar-rotted grins that look like antique piano keys, but at least they can afford spices to cover the stench. Speaking of which, breath. Your breath is a biological weapon. It's been fermenting overnight in a warm, unwashed mouth, where bits of pottage and sour cheese have formed a tragic alliance with bacteria. You try not to exhale directly toward your family. They try not to breathe in your direction either. It's a polite arrangement. Bad breath isn't just accepted, it's expected. Everyone has it. It's the olfactory soundtrack of the village. Monks, millers, maids. Nobody escapes it. When people speak close, they often do so while subtly turning their heads, like they're trying to summon the Holy Spirit without making eye contact. And if the pain becomes unbearable, now you meet the medieval dentist. Except they don't exist. Not really. What you do have is the village barber surgeon. He cuts hair, applies leeches, and yes, yanks out teeth. His tools? A pair of iron tongs and the encouragement of the Lord. There's no anesthetic. Maybe some strong ale if you can afford it. Maybe a stick to bite on. You sit on a stool. He mutters a prayer. You grip your tunic. He reaches into your mouth with something that looks like it belongs in a blacksmith's forge. And then, well, you get one guess as to what comes next. Assuming you survive the extraction, infection is a real possibility. The wound is packed with moss or soaked linen, sometimes a poultice of herbs, sometimes just left open. And if it gets worse, congratulations. You may now die from a toothache. That's not exaggeration. That's reality. An abscess can kill you here, and often does. There are a few tooth powders on the market. mostly for the rich. Ground bones, crushed shells, powdered charcoal. These are mixed with vinegar or urine and applied with cloth or fingers. They taste as good as they sound. And they work about as well as praying for dental health. But you just try to get by. Maybe you chew parsley if it's in season. Maybe you gnaw on mint if it's growing wild. Maybe you breathe through your nose and hope the person you're talking to does the same. You glance at your neighbor across the field. He's chewing something. His teeth are gray. He grins at you and gives a little wave. You wave back and try not to inhale. Because in the Middle Ages, your smile isn't a social tool. It's a battlefield. A collection of aching stumps and slow decay, held together by stubborn gums and passive aggression. You might not look great. You might not smell great. But at least you're not screaming in pain. Yet, you've eaten your pottage. You're dressed in your one and only outfit. Your teeth are doing their best. Now the sun is officially up, and with it comes the next unavoidable step in your medieval existence. Work. Not a hobby. Not a job with benefits. Not even a task you can finish by lunchtime. No, this is work with a capital W, bone-grinding, spine-bending, soul-sapping labor from sunrise to sunset. 6 days a week. Sunday is, technically, for God. But let's not pretend there's any real rest in it. You step outside into the chill. The ground squelches beneath your feet. Mud, manure, and something unidentifiable that probably crawled out of the ditch last night. You breathe in the crisp morning air, flavored heavily with smoke, livestock, and someone's failed attempt at curing fish. As a peasant, your career is chosen for you. You're a laborer. That means farming. Always farming. If you're lucky, you own a small strip of land. If not, you work someone else's field in exchange for food, housing, and the occasional stern nod of acknowledgement. The tools of your trade? Wooden hoe, rusty sickle, bare hands. Your best equipment is your back, and it's already threatening to unionize. Today, the task is digging ditches for drainage. Tomorrow, it might be harvesting barley, hauling stones, or repairing a fence the goat broke. Again, there's always something, and none of it pays. You work because not working means starving. There is no wealth, no retirement, no dream of better things. The goal is simple. Don't die today. The field stretches ahead, brown and uneven, half frozen in places, waterlogged in others. You step carefully to avoid the worst patches. But it's impossible. The mud sucks at your shoes like it's hungry for toes. Within minutes, you're wet to the knees, itchy everywhere, and surrounded by fellow villagers who all look like they've aged 10 years overnight. You get started. The rhythm is simple. Lift, dig, throw. Lift, dig, throw. Your muscles burn, your shoulders scream, you curse the rock that just bent your shovel and keep going. Conversation is minimal. No one has the energy for small talk when they're one blister away from collapse. There's no break room. No tea time. If you're lucky, someone brings out a bit of bread around midday. Harder than the shovel handle, but edible if soaked in pottage. You eat with your hands, wipe your mouth with your sleeve, and immediately go back to work. Children help too. By the time they're 5, they're out here picking stones, herding chickens, or carrying water in leaking buckets. There's no school, no toys, just work. They're miniature adults with dirtier faces and fewer teeth. And women? Oh, they work double, in the field and at home. Tending to children, animals, spinning wool, baking, brewing, mending, cleaning. Every task is theirs, and none of it is optional. Pregnancy is frequent. So is exhaustion. You glance over at the neighbor's wife. She's carrying a bundle of sticks and scolding her toddler at the same time, all while chewing a bit of dried turnip root, like it's a reward. You wipe sweat from your brow with the back of your hand and smear it with mud. There's a cut on your thumb you didn't notice earlier. It stings now. You inspect it. It's red, swollen, hopefully not infected. You mutter a prayer and keep digging. By late afternoon, your arms are jelly. Your spine is a question mark. Your clothes are soaked through, and not just with sweat. Everything aches, even your ears. You're not sure why. It's just part of the ensemble now. The lord of the manor rides past on horseback, clean, smiling, smelling faintly of soap and roasted meat. He nods at you. You nod back. Then he's gone, leaving hoofprints and resentment in his wake. The sun begins to dip behind the trees. Golden light filters through the smoke from distant chimneys. You're done. Not because the work is finished. Oh no, there's always more. But because daylight is the factory whistle of medieval life. When the light goes, so do you. You stagger home. Your legs wobble. Your hands are covered in dirt and scratches. You smell like damp wool, old turnips, and regret. Your head pulses. You are, in every sense of the phrase, utterly used up. There's no bath waiting, no couch, no meal service. Just a cold hut, a smoky fire, and maybe some leftover pottage if you're lucky. You collapse on the bench outside your door for a moment, watching the sky fade to purple. A chicken hops into your lap. You don't have the strength to protest. This is life. Not glamorous, not heroic, just endless, aching survival. But hey, you made it through the day. Only 13,000 more to go. You've finished your medieval shift. 12 hours of wet, weary, back-breaking field work with all the joy of a broken cartwheel. You drag yourself home, your legs moving mostly out of habit, your shoulders slumped like a sad tapestry. And then, as if on cue, it starts to rain. Not a gentle drizzle. Not a poetic mist. No, this is a full medieval deluge. Angry, sideways, cold as forgotten sins rain that soaks through your tunic in seconds and gets into places you didn't know had pores. You break into a hobble run, feet slapping through the mud, water splashing up your shins. By the time you reach your front door, you're dripping, shivering, and quietly whispering curses in a dialect your priest would pretend not to understand. Now, you might think, at least you can dry off inside. But let's talk about your house, or, as it's more accurately known, a box made of wet wood and dashed hopes. You step in and are instantly greeted by the kind of cold that bites. Not the dignified chill of a winter morning, but the damp, bone-deep, never-be-warm-again cold that seeps into your soul. The air inside is thick with smoke from the hearth and a faint odor of wet goat. The roof, made of thatch and optimism, is leaking in at least 3 places. You've placed buckets beneath the worst of them, one's full already and overflowing onto the floor. Your youngest sibling is poking it with a stick for entertainment. Water trickles down the inside walls like it's on a tour of the property. Your wooden bench is soaked. Your straw bedding smells like a drowned sheep. The only dry spot is directly under the hearth, and that's already claimed by your grandmother and her collection of rattling bones. The floor, which was once just dirt, is now a mud puddle. Chickens have walked through it. So has your father. So have you. The results are equal parts comedy and tragedy, depending on how much you value your shins. You remove your soaked tunic, wringing it out with both hands like a medieval dish rag, and hang it near the fire. It will not dry. It will become warmer and wetter in a new, unsettling way. But this is the routine. You do not question it. There is no central heating, no fireplace flue, just an open hearth that burns smoky wood and chokes the room with the rich aroma of pre-modern living. You crouch near it, rubbing your arms, trying to trick your brain into thinking heat is a thing that still exists. And let's not forget winter. In summer, your hut is hot, musty, and full of flies. In winter, it becomes a meat freezer with fleas. Ice creeps across the inside walls. You wake up with frost in your hair. You've seen your breath in the middle of the night and considered snuggling up to the family pig just to avoid freezing to death. You did, The pig was unimpressed. Wool blankets help, but they're heavy, scratchy, and often damp from the leaking roof. You sleep in all your clothes. You wake up colder than when you went to bed. Your nose is a tiny icicle. Your fingers move like wooden spoons. Sometimes, if it gets bad enough, you burn furniture. Chairs, bits of the fence. One memorable winter, you burned your neighbor's cart axle after he skipped town, owing the local baker 2 loaves and a bad debt. It made a good fire. The smell of betrayal kept you warm for hours. In theory, you could stuff the roof with moss or patch it with new thatch, but that requires time, materials, and weather that isn't actively trying to murder you. So instead, you accept the wet, the cold, the slow drip on your forehead in the middle of the night. You adapt. You move your bedding to a slightly less soggy patch. You sit close to the fire until your shins are red and your back is still freezing. You drink more ale, not because it warms you, but because it helps you forget how cold you are. The weather is not your friend. It is a chaotic entity that alternates between drowning your crops and freezing your face off. There are floods, droughts, sudden snow, hail the size of chicken eggs, wind that tears roofs from huts and carries away laundry like a biblical curse. You have no forecast, no warning. Just the aching pain in your knees that tells you a storm is coming, and the resigned muttering of your neighbor who insists the sky smells funny. But despite all this, life goes on. You dry what you can. You patch what you can't. You curse the clouds. Then bless the rain when the well refills. Because while the weather might hate you, it's also the only thing keeping your crops and your family alive. And so you huddle by the fire, watching steam rise from your soaked tunic, and think, maybe tomorrow the sun will come out. Maybe tomorrow the roof won't leak. Maybe tomorrow you won't step in a freezing puddle before breakfast. And until then, you've got a goat to hug. You're still wet. You're still cold. But now, after a long day in the field and a brief but emotional wrestling match with your leaky roof, you're also, unfortunately, thirsty. The solution seems simple. Just grab a cup of water, right? No. In the Middle Ages, water is not your friend. Water is a trap. Water is where the nightmares live. Water is the quiet little assassin that waits in every stream, well, and puddle, whispering sweet nothings laced with dysentery. You learned this young, maybe the hard way. Once, when you were 8, you drank from the river. It looked so fresh, so clear, so inviting. You spent the next week curled into a feverish ball, whispering apologies to every saint whose name you could remember. Lesson learned. So now, when thirst hits, you don't reach for water. You reach for beer. That's right. Good old small beer. The slightly sour, barely alcoholic beverage brewed in nearly every medieval household. Even children drink it. Because in this world, beer is safer than water. Which is really saying something about your water. This beer isn't something you'd find on tap at your local pub. It's more like watery porridge that got confused halfway through its career. Grain is boiled, mashed, strained, maybe fermented if you're lucky, and not in a rush. The result is cloudy, slightly warm, and about 2% alcohol, just enough to kill off some of the microscopic monsters swimming in your bloodstream. You take a sip from your wooden mug. It tastes like sour oatmeal. You drink it anyway. Where does the water for beer come from? Still the well, or the river, or the rain barrel outside. But unlike raw water, beer has been boiled. That little detail might be the only reason your village isn't completely extinct. Still, not everyone is lucky. People do get sick, all the time. You know 3 neighbors who died from bad water just last year. One of them was found sitting beside the stream, slumped over, cup still in hand. Nobody drinks from that part anymore. The local children call it Dead Man's Bend. It's mostly accurate. Your village well isn't much better. It's shallow. The water is murky, and someone once dropped a chicken in it. On purpose? Nobody knows. It was during a feud. You don't ask questions. You try not to think about what's downstream from where you gather water. There's no sanitation system. All the waste from the houses, chamber pots, livestock, and occasional dead rats ends up flowing into the same network of ditches and streams that once, long ago, were considered, quote, clean. There's no filtration, no purification tablets. Sometimes you let the water settle, which is code for wait until it stops wriggling. Sometimes you add vinegar or wine, if you can spare it, and hope for the best. In cities, it's worse. Urban water sources are infamous. In London, the Thames was so polluted it was rumored to catch fire on a hot day. But even in smaller towns, the water that feeds your home can also feed your doom. Wells sit next to latrines. Rain barrels collect bird droppings. Public fountains are shared by humans, dogs, and, occasionally, drunk goats. If you're traveling, things get even sketchier. Inns often serve wine water or ale water, which is exactly what it sounds like, a desperate attempt to make dodgy water look fancy by mixing it with cheap booze. You drink it. You regret it. You continue traveling because your options are limited to that, or dehydration. Which, of course, is the other danger. You can't just not drink. Farming is exhausting. You sweat out more than you eat most days. If you don't replace it, you collapse, maybe even die. So you drink your small beer. You sip your vinegar water. You chew on snow in winter and hope it hasn't been blessed by a passing cow. Rainwater is the safest bet. If you catch it early, before the thatched roof drips into it, before the flies get curious, before the moss adds texture. Some people use linen cloth to filter it. Others rely on divine intervention. You once saw a man bless his mug before every drink. He still died. But everyone agreed it was a noble effort. So when you're thirsty, you drink cautiously, slowly, with a sniff and a squint, and a brief mental calculation. How likely is this to kill me? And when it's hot out, when you're sunburned, when your lips are cracked and your sweat tastes like salt, and someone offers you a mug of cloudy, barely fermented ale, you take it. You drink deep. And you say thank you. Because in the Middle Ages, survival often tastes like lukewarm barley soup, and that's good enough. It starts with a cough. Just a little one, dry and polite. You ignore it. Maybe it's the smoke from the hearth, or the mold in the straw, or the general vibe of 14th century existence. You carry on, thinking it'll pass. By midday, your head hurts. Your muscles ache. Your nose is running in 2 directions at once. And suddenly you're facing one of the most terrifying experiences a medieval peasant can have. Being sick. Now, we must clarify. Everyone is always kind of sick in the Middle Ages. If it's not lice, it's worms. If it's not worms, it's boils. If it's not boils, it's a persistent cough you've had since last harvest and named Gregory. But this is worse. You lie on your straw mattress, shivering, sweating, and contemplating your place in the medieval food chain, which, to be fair, is somewhere just above spoiled cheese and just below expendable pig. Your family gathers, not to offer soup or sympathy. There is no soup, and sympathy is expensive, but to watch and wonder. Will you make it? Or will they have to carry you to the churchyard before the week's out? Someone fetches the village healer. She's not a doctor. Those are for rich people and popes. She's a wise woman. Or an old man who smells like thyme and goat breath. Or a barber surgeon who doubles as the village dentist, bloodletter, and general enthusiast of questionable methods. Today, it's Agnes. Agnes arrives wrapped in shawls, carrying a pouch full of roots, feathers, and mystery. She squints at you. She smells your breath. She mutters in Latin. Then she declares, "Your humors are out of balance." Ah, yes, the 4 humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. The building blocks of your health, according to medical science from the same people who think toads cure warts and sneezes, are miniature exorcisms. Too much blood? You'll need bleeding. Too much phlegm? Time for mustard plasters and horseradish vapor. Too much black bile? Laxatives, or possibly leeches, or both. Too much yellow bile? An enema. Don't ask. Agnes decides you need a poultice. She mashes some herbs, adds pig fat, maybe a pinch of holy dust, and smears it on your chest. It's warm. It's slimy. It smells like the back of the stable. You say thank you anyway. She also burns a bit of rosemary. Not for healing, just to cover the smell. If things get worse, she might apply leeches. Or perform bloodletting with a curved knife that hasn't been cleaned since the last plague. Or press a hot iron to your back and call it balancing the heat. Medical treatment in the Middle Ages often feels like someone is trying to cure you by accident. If you're really sick, someone might call for a priest, not because he's good with medicine. He's not, but because it's time to confess your sins. Just in case this cough turns terminal. The priest arrives, smells like wine and old books, listens solemnly as you mumble your misdeeds, most of which involve bread theft and passive-aggressive thoughts about the Lord's horse, then absolves you. You don't feel better, but now you're slightly less worried about going to hell if you don't wake up tomorrow. Meanwhile, your family keeps doing what they always do, working. If you're still breathing, you're not dead. If you're not dead, you can recover. If you die, well, there's always Cousin Henry to take your spot in the barley field. There's no hospital, no antibiotics, no vitamins. Healing is a mix of folk wisdom, superstition, herbs, and sheer willpower. If you survive, it's considered divine mercy. If you don't, your name is carved into a wooden cross, and your tunic is washed for reuse. And somehow, many people do survive. The human body is surprisingly stubborn. You recover. Slowly, you keep coughing. But you're upright. And eventually, you're back in the field, a little weaker, a little wiser, and with a lingering suspicion that Agnes cured you by accident. But you made it. Again. For now, the sun dips low, casting long shadows through the crooked wooden frames of your village. The bells chime from the church tower, more out of tradition than accuracy, and it's time for the last event of the day, supper. You'd think this would be a comfort, a small reward after hours of mud, misery, and medieval medicine. But no supper is not a reward, it's a test, a challenge. A game of guess what's in the bowl played with questionable ingredients and zero lighting. You sit at the table, or, more accurately, the plank of wood propped on barrels, and prepare for the evening meal. Everyone gathers around. The fire crackles. The smoke drifts lazily into everyone's lungs. It's cozy, in the way a damp cellar with rats is cozy. Tonight's meal, pottage, again. But don't worry. It's not the same pottage you had this morning. No, this one is slightly thicker, slightly browner, and contains at least 3 surprise ingredients that no one remembers adding. Pottage, as you've learned, is less a recipe and more an evolving ecosystem. It lives in the pot, absorbing whatever leftovers, weeds, scraps, or edible-looking fungi someone finds throughout the day. The pot itself hasn't been fully cleaned since ever. It's seasoned, as the cook says, which is a polite way of saying it has the flavor profile of a boot. You lean in, peer into your bowl, and begin the nightly ritual of ingredient roulette. Is that a turnip? Probably. Is that meat? Maybe. Depends how generous your neighbor was today. Is that meat moving? Hopefully not. Is that spice? No. It's ash from the hearth. You stir it. It glops. You take a bite. It's hot, salty, and tastes vaguely of onion, dirt, and surrender. You chew slowly, imagining you're eating something else, like bread, or cheese, or joy. But wait, what's this? A chunk of actual meat? You glance around the table. Your sister raises an eyebrow. Your cousin stops mid-chew. Everyone saw it. Real meat in the pottage is as rare as a dry tunic in December. You inspect it. It's small, tough, might be rabbit, might be rat. You don't ask, you eat it anyway. Supper conversation is limited, mostly grunts and sniffles. Someone makes a joke about Father Gilbert falling into a ditch. You laugh. Quietly. Laughter uses calories. Someone coughs. The room goes still. Everyone stares. Just a seasonal cough? Or the start of something worse? Nobody says anything. You keep eating. If there's bread, it's stale. If there's cheese, it's sharp. Very sharp. Aged in a way that suggests it was once lost under the table and recently rediscovered. If there's ale left, you drink it. Slowly. It helps the pottage go down and your spirits come up. Dessert? Not a thing. Maybe, on feast days, you get stewed apples or honey cakes. But today? No. Today is for boiled carrots and quiet despair. Once you've eaten every last bite, because wasting food is just slightly less sinful than heresy, you wipe your bowl clean with a crust of bread. Then you hand it to the youngest sibling to lick. Hygiene is a community effort. Plates aren't washed with soap and water. They're scrubbed with sand or ashes, wiped with cloth, and stored for the next meal. The pot stays on the fire. The stew stays in the pot. It will be breakfast again tomorrow. And probably lunch. And if no one gets sick, dinner. You sit back, full-ish. Not satisfied, not energized, but no longer actively hungry. And in the Middle Ages, that's the dream. You listen to the crackle of the fire, the creak of the wind through the thatch, the sound of a sibling snoring already. Your stomach gurgles. You pray it's digestion and not regret. Outside, the village is dark. The only lights are from fires and candles. Precious, smoky, and too expensive to use casually. Inside, the room glows with flickering shadows. You huddle under a blanket next to your family and feel the warmth of bodies, the heaviness of supper, and the creeping thought that tomorrow will be exactly the same. The fire has dimmed to embers. The air is heavy with smoke, stew, and the general musk of people who've shared a room, a meal, and a questionable hygiene routine for far too long. It's nighttime in the Middle Ages, time to sleep, or at least attempt it. Your bed is a pile of straw, not the soft golden storybook kind. Real straw, scratchy, pokey, often moldy, spread across the floor or tucked into a wooden frame if your family's doing well. It smells faintly of mildew and goat. Probably because a goat slept on it once, maybe twice. You fluff it. It makes no difference. If you're lucky, you have a blanket. It's made of rough wool and weighs as much as a small pig. It keeps you warm, but it also traps smells like a loyal but slightly resentful friend. It hasn't been washed in months. If ever, you crawl under it fully dressed. There's no such thing as pajamas unless you're royalty. Everyone sleeps in their day clothes, not for comfort, for survival. Undressing at night would mean peeling off frozen tunics and risking frostbite before breakfast. No thank you. You find your spot, sandwiched between siblings, cousins, or parents. Medieval families don't do privacy. There's one room, one bed if you're lucky, and about 6 too many people for comfort. You're elbow to elbow with humanity. Someone kicks you. You kick back. This is how bedtime begins. Then come the sounds. Snoring, coughing, whimpering. The occasional midnight fart that sets off a chain reaction of giggles. One sibling talks in their sleep. Another grinds their teeth. Somewhere in the corner, a chicken makes a noise like it's seen the devil. The goat bleats. Again, you try to drift off. But your brain is awake. Because in the Middle Ages, nighttime is not peaceful. It's full of things. Things in the thatch. Mice, rats, insects, maybe a bat, maybe something worse. The roof above you rustles as if plotting. Then there are the bedfellows you didn't invite, fleas and lice. You scratch, they celebrate. You shift positions, they shift with you. It's like sleeping on a bumpy, itchy waterbed made of betrayal. Outside, the wind howls. Wolves, maybe, or bandits, or just an especially rude gust of air. You can't tell. You close your eyes tighter. Your dreams, when they finally come, are strange, feverish, a blend of saints, turnips, and that one time the village priest sneezed during Mass and everyone panicked. You wake up unsure if it's morning or just the middle of the medieval night. Because here's something nobody tells you. People in the Middle Ages didn't sleep through the night. That's right. They practiced something called segmented sleep. You go to bed early, wake up around midnight, stay up for an hour or two, then go back to sleep until dawn. During that middle wake time, you might pray, read if you can, do chores, or just sit and think about how cold your feet are. You wake up for your first wake and see your father stoking the fire. Your mother is whispering a prayer. Someone's chewing something, possibly a leftover crust. You sit up. Scratch. Contemplate the meaning of life. Then lie back down. Eventually, sleep returns. And then, all too soon, the rooster crows. The cycle begins again. You stretch. Everything aches. You've slept, technically, but you don't feel rested. You are one more day into your medieval life. Still alive, still itchy, still vaguely smelling of cheese and wood smoke. You rise. Because there's pottage to eat, a bucket to empty, a field to dig, and the blessed promise of another night in the bed of mild regrets. The rooster crows. Not the romantic, storybook cock-a-doodle-doo of sunrise celebrations, but an ungodly, nasal shriek that sounds more like a medieval trumpet being strangled. It pierces the smoky air like a divine alarm clock with feathers. You groan. The fire has gone out. The hut is freezing. Your blanket has shifted, letting in every sharp corner of morning cold. Someone has rolled onto your arm. Someone else has kicked your shin. The straw is damp. Again, you open one eye. The world is brown. Brown walls. Brown floor. Brown everything. You smell pottage, goat, and a faint tang of, someone needs to air this place out. You take a deep breath and instantly regret it. Congratulations, you've survived another full medieval day. And now, you're waking up to do it all over again. Your joints crack like firewood. Your back feels like it tried to quit your body during the night. You sit up, scratching places you'd rather not admit. Your breath could strip paint off the chapel door. You yawn, stretch, and accidentally elbow your sibling in the face. They grunt. All is normal. Someone stirs the hearth. Smoke fills the room. The fire sputters back to life. A rooster struts in through the open door like he owns the place. You consider throwing your shoe at him, but it's your only shoe. You step outside. The morning mist hangs over the village. Chickens are pecking. Dogs are barking. Someone is already shouting about pigs in the barley. A cart wobbles past, driven by a man who looks just as tired as you feel. The air is crisp, earthy, and somehow both fresh and moldy at the same time. You can see your breath, which at least confirms you're still breathing. You scratch again. Back inside, your mother is stirring the pottage pot. Yes, it's still going. At this point, the pottage has developed personality. It might be older than your youngest sibling. You sit down, accept your bowl, and begin the sacred ritual of eating breakfast without questioning the ingredients. Across the table, your father is pulling on the same tunic he's worn since Michaelmas. Your sister is brushing her hair with a twig. Your cousin is already arguing about chickens. Life continues, and you realize something. You've adapted. You no longer question the roof leaking, or the fact that bread could double as a building material, or that your feet haven't felt dry since last April. You accept the fleas, the pottage, the sore muscles, the bucket. You're not thriving, but you're surviving. And in the Middle Ages, that's pretty much the gold standard. You gather your tools, you tie your hose. You sigh deeply as you step into the mud for another day of digging, planting, threshing, bleeding, or being mildly cursed by a neighbor over a boundary dispute. Another day of smoke, soup, lice, leeches, and small beer. Another day in a time where everything is harder, louder, colder, and smellier than it needs to be. Another day in the Middle Ages, and yet, somehow, not the worst thing. Because, against all odds, you've learned to live it.